Hello and welcome to our webinar today on Southwest Minnesota Arts Council's individual artist grants for fiscal year 2022, which for us runs from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. And today we'll be talking about our artist grants for emerging and career artists and also artist grants with a community collaboration project. I am Carolyn Koska, the grants administrator at Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, and I will just first run down what we're going to talk about today. We'll briefly talk about Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, then we'll take a look at the guidelines for these two programs that we're talking about today. Then we'll go on to our website and look at what resources are available for you there. From there, we'll go into our grant system and walk through the application. And we'll finish up talking about the grant process, basically what happens after you submit an application. Throughout the presentation, please note any questions that you may have, and we'll stop a couple times to get those answered. And then at the end, we will have an opportunity for you to talk more about your specific projects. So Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, or SMOC, is a nonprofit organization committed to promoting and encouraging the development of the arts in the 18 counties of Southwest Minnesota by serving as a source of funds and technical services, which enable local organizations, educational institutions, and individuals to sponsor, create, and promote the arts in their communities. Here is our region that we cover down in the southwest corner of the state. We are one of 11 regional arts councils that cover the whole state of Minnesota. Our funding mostly comes from the state of Minnesota, partly through an allocation from their general fund, but mostly from the Arts and Cultural Heritage or Legacy Fund. We also get funding from the McKnight Foundation, which some of our grants here today are funded by, along with donations from individuals and organizations within our region. Some things that we are committed to are supporting artists and arts organizations in creating, producing, and presenting high quality arts activities, overcoming barriers to accessing high quality arts activities, instilling the arts into the community and public life, supporting high quality, age appropriate arts education for all ages to develop knowledge, skills, and understanding of the arts, and supporting events and activities that represent the diverse ethnic and cultural arts traditions of the region. So we're hoping that everything we fund relates back to these commitments. So that's just something to keep in mind as you are thinking about projects you may do. So we'll start out and talk about our individual artist grants for emerging and established career artists. If you are familiar with our grant programs, you will realize that these actually have been two separate programs in the past. What we're doing this year is just combining them into the same application. The two categories will still be scored separately, but we're just trying to streamline a little bit. So these individual artist grants are open to adults who are at least 18 by the time of signing a grant contract. You need to live in one of the 18 counties or tribal lands within our service region. We acknowledge that this region occupies the traditional, ancestral, and contemporary lands of the Dakota people who have stewarded these lands throughout the generations. We ask that you are a resident in the region for at least 6 months before applying, and that you stay within the region during your grant contract period. Also, all art disciplines are accepted for these grants. The goals we're hoping to reach through these grants are to help you progress in your artistic development, to progress in your professional career as an artist, to expand your audience, and to increase your ability to live and work as an artist in this region. So more specifically, things that you can do with these grant funds may include creating new work, such as purchasing supplies or equipment needed, renting space, Any research costs, you can pay yourself for your time to work on your artwork. Also, daycare costs are included there as well. Your project may also include sharing your work, which could be things like framing, recording, editing to prepare for publishing, producing a portfolio, or getting a website. And finally, your project might contain some artistic or professional development opportunity, which could be attending a class or a workshop, doing some one-on-one study with a mentor, or attending a conference. So these are just some general areas of things covered by this grant program. Here is where we differentiate the two categories that you could choose to apply under. We have our emerging on one end and our established career on the other, and you'll need to choose one of those in order to apply. And it's not necessarily a clear-cut distinction. It's kind of on this continuum here, but we're expecting that people more on the emerging end of the continuum would have a limited but still promising record of publishing, exhibiting, or performing. And these applicants would be at the early or mid stage of their career development. Then on the other end of the continuum, we have the established career artist, and these people will have significant accomplishments. They are sought after for performances or solo shows, and they are really recognized by their peers throughout the region and the state as being an established artist. So if you are trying to figure out which to apply as, some things to look at are the kinds of things that would be listed in your artist resume. So basically, the more of these things you have, the more likely you would be to be an established career artist. So we're looking at things like the exhibitions or performances that you've had, publications or recordings, awards, things like that. So you can kind of look through your accomplishments and see where you fall, determine which category you want to apply under. Sometimes we recommend, if you're not sure, to go toward the emerging side, but you can definitely contact us and we can talk through if you are unsure which to apply as. So emerging artists can request up to $2,500 and established career artists can request up to $7,000. And for both of those, no match is required, which means that you do not need to put any of your own money toward the project unless it costs more than the amount of the grant. Some things to just be aware of things that we can't fund. Equipment requests that aren't specifically tied to the project you're applying for, credits or materials to fulfill degree requirements for students. College students can apply, but their project has to be totally separate from what they are doing towards their degree. We also can't fund applications that are primarily about developing curriculum plans or teaching materials. We're hoping that with these grants, you're really focusing on yourself as an artist rather than a teacher. We also cannot fund requests for new building construction or purchase of real estate, activities for the religious socialization of the participants or audience, activities that attempt to influence any state or federal legislation, payments of debts incurred before the grant begins, and applicants with a past SMOC grant project still in progress or with a past due final report. So that's just has been a quick overview of our guidelines and eligibility items. It's a good idea to check our full program guidelines along with the general grant guidelines that apply to all of our grants, just to make sure you're on the right track. Now we'll talk a little bit about the community collaboration grants. So these are open to the same group of people, adults in our region, any art discipline accepted. And the intent of this grant program is to fund sort of a dual project that impacts both the artist and a community. And they're working together in a creative and collaborative relationship. And we're looking for that project to have a lasting impact on both the artist and the community. So as part of that, we're looking for the artists to be continuing in their artistic development through creating some new work as part of this project. And then the other piece would be them collaborating with the community. And they could be introducing the community to the arts in a new way, reaching a part of the population that doesn't normally run into this art form. And that community component should be tailored toward the actual community in which the project is being done. The artist will need to have a community partner organization for the project. It can be an organization like a city government, chamber of commerce, arts council, historical society, or other nonprofit organization. Not a school, however. The community partner would be able to help with things like maybe they're taking care of your marketing for you, maybe they're providing space for you to do your activities, things like that. And the community collaboration grants are available for up to $10,000. And again, no match is required. Some eligibility things again, along with what we already mentioned for the emerging and established career grants. For the community collaboration grant, you also cannot ask for funding for fees for entering juried competitions or shows, taking classes or workshops, traveling for research, because those are all more of the really individual focused kind of activities. This particular grant program uses state funds, so we cannot fund activities that take place outside of Minnesota. The emerging and established career grants use McKnight Foundation funds, and there is no restriction on travel for those. But the community collaboration, you do need to stay within the state. Also, we can't fund activities that are not open to the public, requiring artists to pay excessive entry or exhibition fees, or for educational projects within a school system. Again, make sure that you check both the guidelines for this program and those general grant guidelines to make sure you are on the right track. For both of these programs, you're going to need a start date and an end date. And when you're thinking about a start date to choose, we're really considering that the point at which your project is set in motion. So as soon as you're starting things like ordering supplies, if you're registering for a class and booking travel to attend that, if there's any payment of fees or contracts, any auditions or rehearsals, any advertising, all of that is considered having started your project. With that in mind, your start date should not be the date of your first activity or event. So for instance, if you were taking a class, your start date would not be the first day of the class. It would be, you'd need to give yourself time to register for the class and take care of if there's any travel involved in it, etc. So you can't spend any funds before that project start date. If there's something you absolutely need to spend before that, if you, for instance, have to put a down payment on registration or something, you can't include that amount in your grant budget. That would have to just be left out, and you could mention elsewhere in your application that that's already been paid for. You'll also need to choose your project end date, and not as much criteria along with that. We just need to make sure all projects are finished by June 30th, 2023. So we have 2 application rounds this year. Our first round is coming up August 4th for projects starting October 1st or later. And then we have a second round on January 12th for projects starting March 1st or later. And all of these applications need to be submitted by 4:30 p.m. on the deadline date. The system will not allow you to submit after that time. And I will stop here for a moment if there are any questions. All right, not hearing any questions. We are going to head on over to our website and take a look at what is available for you here. One thing to point out as we're on the homepage of the website, this is going to be your easiest place to get to our online grant system. If you scroll down beneath the slides there, there's this black grants box with a login button. So that'll be your fastest way to get into that grant system. There's also another way to get that, and that's from each individual grant page we have here. And I will show you that in a minute. And we'll take a look at the page for emerging and established career grants. And here's the other place where you can get to that grant system, this Apply Now button. You don't have to be actually applying to click that, it just takes you to the login. So here is our page for this grant program. As on all the other grant program pages, you'll find important dates, when those rounds are, when your applications are being reviewed, and reminders of those earliest project start dates. And then we've got some materials linked for you here. Here are the guidelines for this grant program. We also have here our general grant guidelines that we talked about that apply to all of our grant programs. If you prefer to work in a Word document first on your application draft and then paste into the system later, we've got the application questions available here in a Word document. We've got a couple options for you for the budget form. It's also available within the application, so we'll take a look at that in a bit. Here are the scoring criteria. That's what the grant review panel will be using to score your applications. You can just take a quick look here. So it goes into detail, and we'll talk more about those in a moment. Coming soon will be the final report questions, also in an editable document if you want to look ahead and see what kinds of questions you'll be needing to answer. And then we've just got a couple tutorials and guides for using the grant system. So we are going to click our Apply Now button and head over to the grant system. So we come to our login page. If you already have an account in the system, you would go ahead and log in. If you don't have an account, you would create one here, create new account, or if you're not sure if you already have one or not, it's best to just contact us and we can let you know what is going on with that so you don't create extra accounts for yourself. We are just gonna log in here. If you are returning to the system, you'll come to your applicant dashboard here. But if you are coming in for the first time, you'll actually be taken right away to this apply page. When you click the apply button, you'll come to this page that lists all of the grant programs that we currently have open. So you'll want to scroll down and find the one you're looking for. We've got a bunch of stuff for organizations first here. But here is our individual artists for our emerging and established career artists. If you want to just take a look at the application without actually starting anything, you can click that preview button. Otherwise, to actually get started, you can click apply, which is what we're going to do. So you'll come to your application. I'm just going to point out a couple things here. Um, Up in the corner here, we've got Google Translate embedded in the system. So if you'd like to work in a different language, you can do that. Here, this copy previous answers button, if you have done an application in the system before, you can choose to copy your answers from that into a new application. So that can save some time for you, possibly if you have applied before. And then we have the collaborate button. So if you would like to have someone proof your application for you, or if you're having the mentor you're working with, you could have them come in and attach some samples of the work, something like that. So if you click on the collaborate button, enter in the email address of the person, and then choose what level of permission you want to give them, and then you can ask them here what you would like them to do. They'll get an email and just need to create a quick password to get in and collaborate with you on the application. Um, at the top here, we've got some options if you have questions or need some help. One, you can click here to schedule a meeting with me. It's real easy. Just choose how you want to meet, and it'll take you to my calendar, and you can just grab a time right there to easily schedule some time to get some questions answered, or feel free to email any questions. This is my email address here. So as you're starting your application, you'll need a name for your project. As it says, just a few words that describe what you're going to do. It doesn't need to be anything fancy or poetic. Um, You'll enter in here the amount you're requesting, although you'll probably want to wait to do that until you have filled out your budget form. Then we're just verifying some contact information. This is more for people who are coming back into the system after having applied before, to just verify that their contact information is correct. Then we've got some links to some of those documents that we talked about earlier. Um, just some things to think about as you are writing your grant. I'm just going to talk about this one about character limits for the moment. We do have a really pretty large character limit for the narrative fields, and we're really not expecting you to fill that up. We want you to have enough room if you do have a lot to say, but please don't feel like you need to try and fill up that entire character limit. Sometimes just a few sentences to a few paragraphs will be enough, depending on the question. So the next thing you'll do is choose your artist category. It reminds you what those are again. And for right now, we're going to click emerging artists. There's some different questions that show up when you click the established career artist, and we'll come back and look at that. But we'll go through the application first as emerging artist. So you will describe your project. If you are going to be doing some new work, what are you planning to do? What is the scope that you are hoping to produce? What kind of artistic vision do you have for the work? Do you have something that you're trying to say with this new work? Are you going for a particular aesthetic? Or you could talk about why this works particularly well in this medium, things like that. If you are having a study opportunity as part of your project, you can describe that there. And then we'd also like you to outline your timeline for the project. This next section is optional. You can attach some supplemental materials here. The kinds of things this might include, or if you want to provide some more information about your class that you're going to, or a teacher that you're working with. If you want to give more details about particular equipment or supplies that you're purchasing, if perhaps some medium or technique that you're using might not be familiar to everybody, and you want to give some more information about that. So like I said before, this is all optional. If you feel you have some extra information you'd like to attach, so you can upload a couple different files here if you want, or also provide some links. You'll enter your start and end date there. Then we come to the budget. You have several options for your budget. We have here an Excel budget form, a PDF budget form, or you are welcome to create your own. We're going to click on the Excel one for the moment so you can see what that looks like. So here is your budget form. You can put your project name in there. You've got a whole bunch of space to type in whatever it is that you are wanting to purchase. It's a good idea to be pretty specific. For instance, if you are putting in there time for yourself, if you're going to pay yourself a certain amount, it's a good idea to put an estimate of this many hours at this rate equals the amount that I'm paying myself. So anyway, you can put your descriptions and amounts in here, and this will total for you. I was going to stick some numbers in here. All right. So it'll total your expenses for you there. And then it grabs this number as a reminder down here for how much you can request. So it tells you your request cannot exceed your total expenses from up here, or the maximum request amount for this grant program, whichever is less. And let's say we were doing the emerging artist. So you could request 2,500 or 811, whichever is less. So in this case, it would be 811. If your expenses are more than the amount that you can request, we've got some space here for you to indicate where the other funding for that project is coming from. So you would just fill this out on your computer, save it, and then upload it into this upload field here. The PDF budget form basically looks the same, except it's a PDF form instead of an Excel form. Also, just a reminder that your grant funding does count towards your taxable income, to keep that in mind as you're deciding what you want to do. We've got a budget narrative field here. If you want to further break down some of the costs and that didn't fit into your budget form, you can do that here, or just provide a little more information about that. Then we go into your experience and your work. So this is one of the questions that is specific either to emerging or established career. And for the moment, we have the emerging question. You can upload your artist resume here, or you have the option to just describe your training and accomplishments. So either you would upload in this upload field, or right in the text field here. Then if you work in folk or traditional art, we ask you to talk about the cultural community, where that comes from, and your connection to that community. You can provide your artist's website if you have one. And then we ask for samples of your work. There are some parameters here for if you have written materials, images, audio, video. We've got some links here if you're trying to figure out how to get multiple images into one PDF, for instance. And we have quite a few upload fields here. You'll put in your description of what you're uploading and then attach that here. So we've got 8 of these upload fields that are each 10 megabytes. So quite a bit of space for you there. And then we've got some website fields where you can put in links if you have video to share, for instance. Then here's our other question that is different between the two categories. So as an emerging artist, you're asked, based on where you are now in your artistic career, how will this project contribute to your growth as an artist? And what artistic needs does this project meet for you? So really, what are you hoping to get out of this grant project? Then we've just got some questions that are just some data that we're collecting. It doesn't really have any bearing on your application, just some things that we need to pass on to the state. These that have codes, if you click the link, it'll give you that list of those codes and you can choose what you want to and enter that into here. And then at the end, we've got a place for you to put your legal name. And if perhaps you do your artwork under a slightly different name, you can put that here and choose to have that used for publicity, for instance. And you finish up by your electronic signature here. Let's just run back to the top again, and I'll just show you those couple of questions that are different for the established career artist. And when you select one of these, the right questions will show up, so you don't have to worry about figuring out which ones to answer. So for this established career artist, they're still in number 2 here, uploading or describing their resume or accomplishments. But first they are asked to also answer in this text box here how their experience places them at that established level. And then our other question, with the growth as an artist, these first 2 bullet points are the same, but what is added is explaining how you're going to share your project with the community. So as you're working, this will auto save for you, but if you want to, you can also save by clicking this button at the bottom. There's your submit application for when you're ready for that, but we're just going to click save here. So then when you do that, it'll tell you here are the questions that you have not answered yet. So that's kind of a good double check kind of how far you are. To keep working, you just hit continue, but we are going to head back to our dashboard by clicking the little house icon. So now you can see on the dashboard here, here's the application that we just started. And to go back into that, you would click the edit application link there. This is the same place you would come back to if you're awarded a grant, and it would have your contract and your final report. So for the community collaboration grant, you're asked some more questions about the actual community project, and there are a few more things about outcomes that you need to answer. Since that one is using state funds, there are a few more requirements along with that, but you'll find the applications generally similar. All right, so we're going to jump back over to our slides, and I can stop here again if there are any questions.
Hi, my name is Libby, and I have a quick question.
Okay.
So is there any limit to within a time frame of either a round or a year? Are you allowed to apply for multiple grants at the same time, or do they just ask that you kind of do one in a year, or how does that work?
Yeah, as an artist, the limitation is that you can only have one project going at a time.
Okay, so as
So
long as the dates aren't necessarily like if you applied for one, but the start and end dates weren't overlapping, then that would be okay?
yeah, you'd need to have kind of finished up and reported on one
Okay, okay.
to
So the report
apply
has to be
again.
finalized before you can apply for another one.
Mhm.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. That perfectly answers my
Yep.
question. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions at the moment? If not, we
sorry,
will.
I guess I
Go
I
ahead.
did think of one other
Yep.
one other one. This is Livy again. You mentioned something about having uh is there specific times that you guys have if we're working on an application? I saw that you showed the calendar of, is that we would go through you if we had questions, that you specifically would set up a time if we were working on our application and we had some questions
Yeah, you
that
can
we wanted
definitely
to.
do that. Either set up a time on my calendar or send me an email or call the office. Although these days we are not necessarily all in the office every day. So
Totally.
yeah,
And then you mentioned something too about having a mentor. Is that something that do you guys have that as part of your of a program where you help set people up with mentors, or are you just
no, we
talking about if
don't.
someone? Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Just wondering. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. So, a few tips as you are writing your application. It's always a really good idea to start early. I think this is the most important tip, just to make sure you have time to gather everything that you need for your work samples, for instance, or if you need to get information about um, a teacher that you're working with, and also to get any questions answered from us. So make sure to give yourself plenty of time. Read through the guidelines carefully to make sure you're not missing something important. Uh, as you saw, a lot of the questions have multiple parts to them, so make sure that you uh, check that you have covered each part of the question. That's something that seems to get missed often, so important thing to be aware of. And then we talked earlier about not needing to kind of pad out your answers to fill up the text limit, but just keep your answers clear and concise. We are not expecting any fancy grant language. So if you are just, writing this as you would be explaining to someone you're speaking to about what you're hoping to do, that is just fine. We encourage our reviewers to just take a look really at the content of what is being said and not to worry about the actual writing. It's also good to assume that the grant reviewers don't know anything about you or your project. And this kind of ties in with have someone else read your application. It's a good idea to have somebody who's not necessarily familiar with what you do read through your application, and they might be able to catch, some missing information that is obvious to you, but not necessarily obvious to everyone. So that's a good thing to do as well. We have multiple ways for you to get assistance with your application. We were talking a little bit about that before, but it's a good idea to call us to talk about your project before starting an application, and we can make sure that you are um, headed into the right grant program for what you're trying to do. As we mentioned before, contact us with questions as you're filling out your application. And then also, we as staff can review your application before you submit it. If you let us know up to about 2 weeks before the deadline, we can go in there and take a look at your application and make sure that you're not missing anything. Or we can tell you, actually, we were looking for you to go a little more in this direction when answering this question, things like that. So that can be really helpful for people. If you contact us, once it gets to be just 2 weeks before the deadline, we can't guarantee that we're able to look at your application, but you can always ask. So after you've submitted your application, we as staff review it for eligibility and completeness. And again, at this stage, if we find that there's something missing, you will have 48 hours to fix that. Then the applications will go on to a panel of individuals from around our region. They will discuss and score the group of applications based on the criteria for the program, and we'll look at that in a second here. And then from there, their recommendations go on to our board of directors who make the final funding decisions. So for these programs, for the emerging and established career artists, what they will be looking at is the feasibility of the project, which is worth 3 points. They'll take a look at your work and experience, and that is worth 18 points. And then they will also look at how much is this contributing to your professional growth for 10 points. So you can kind of see where more importance is put on those criteria. Then for the community collaboration grants, we've got the same three here: the feasibility, the excellence of work, and contribution to artistic growth, but also added in is the merit of the community project. And if you pull up the link to that criteria sheet, there are sub bullets under each of these criteria that give you more of an idea of what they are actually looking at. So after all that is done, applicants can be awarded one additional percentage point for each of these following criteria that they meet. One, if they are a first-time applicant to us, if they are from a BIPOC or LGBTQIA community or have a disability, or if they live in a part of our region that has received fewer grants recently. So if your grant is awarded, you will complete a contract. And once you've done that, you'll receive 80% of your grant award around the time of your start date. And then you'll receive the remaining 20% after your project and your final report are completed. You'll need to acknowledge the grant on any promotional things that you're putting out there. This may not apply to your project, but if you do have some public facing aspects to your project, you'd need to include that credit line. If you're doing the community collaboration grant, you'll need to include the legacy logo. But all of this will be sent to you, so you won't have to guess what needs to be put into your marketing. Then for your final report, that'll be due 60 days after your project end date. It's a good idea to look through that final report as you're starting your project, just to make sure the kinds of information you'll need to collect during your project. And that is all that I have to say about these particular grants today. I'm just going to point out a couple of other grant programs that may be of interest. Our artist equity grants are available for Black, Indigenous, and artists of color. That has an ongoing deadline through May 1st of 2022. So you can submit an application anytime. We have a webinar coming up on July 1st about this one, so you can learn more then. Then we have a new grant program this year called Quick Support for Artists. And this is a smaller amount, but a much quicker turnaround grant. Basically, the deadline is the first of the month, August through April. And so by the first of the next month, you should be able to start your project if you are awarded. And we have a webinar in this one on July 19th. So that is all I have for today. We've got some contact information for you here. Feel free to get a hold of us with any questions you may have. No question is too small. And then again, I will just ask if anyone has any questions. If there's something, a specific project that you have in mind that you want to talk about, I will just stay on here for a little bit if there's anything else to talk about.
I have a question. This is Libby again. If you are doing a collaborative project, can more than one artist apply for the same grant?
That is
like
just a one artist, so it couldn't be
okay.
a group of
So
a few applying together.
But you could have obviously other people who work with you. You would just do one application, or no? Yeah. Okay.
One application, and we really would like it to be mainly one artist, and maybe they have a helper, but it's really one person.
Okay.
Anything else I can answer for anybody? Well, it sounds like no questions at the moment. So I'll just say thanks for joining us today, and we hope to hear from you.